So we all know Volvo is the safe bricks on the road. Literally one of the most rectangular wagons you could ever see other than the cube car maybe. They're most likely driven by your local college professor or maybe a chiropractor. But did you know that Volvos can basically anything they want to? Volvos are extremely badass cars. They're so badass that even Gus Fring from Breaking Bad drives one of these. They're kind of chill looking on the outside, but pretty freaky on the inside. Like 100 years ago, Volvo got the reputation for being built like a tank. Say you bomb a Volvo dealership, the smoke will clear and the building will be gone. All the Volvos will be as spotless as they were when they came out of the factory. If you catch a Volvo in the wild, you kind of have to steer clear, because if you get in an accident with this car, you're gonna get mowed down. These cars will not sacrifice their driver for your safety. If you T-bone a Volvo, your car is probably gonna get totaled, and theirs will not. If you see a Volvo flip over and roll towards you, you're probably gonna get steamrolled, but that's obviously not a realistic scenario because a Volvo will never flip over. Volvos are just so badass that they will not break ever, and they will not explode,
and they will just sit exactly where they are.
If you've watched my other videos, then you should know that BMWs are the best inline-6 company ever. Well, Volvo is basically the same, but for turbo inline-5 engines. Back in the 80s, they built the 240 Turbo. This car comes in almost any trim you can think of, and it was surprisingly fast for the time, but not quite as fast as the 850 TR or the 850R that they built in the 90s. These are basically the first Volvos that mogged hard. 250 horsepower in the 90s is absolutely fucked. The Mustang GT only had 215 horsepower. 250 horsepower in the 90s is like bringing a chainsaw to a pillow fight. First of all, turbo inline-5s might be the best sounding engines ever. Secondly, the video title does not lie. Volvos look awesome. Something about the geometry, the headlights, I don't know, they just look like the craziest sleepers of all time. Maybe that's what Volvo is, the craziest sleeper of all time. Volvos just subtly look so nice. They have so many nice features too. For example, let me just talk about the Volvo S60R and V70R for a minute. These are basically the same cars, except the S60R is a sedan and the V70R is a wagon. I believe these came out in the early 2000s. This is the time that car manufacturers were snorting coke on the job. BMW put a V10 in a family sedan. The Audi RS6 C5 was insane. And of course we have the E55 AMG and the Jaguar XJR. These cars were just wild. Horsepower numbers that were unheard of at the time. But then we have the Volvo S60R and V70R. So these turbo inline-5 family cars packed a very solid and reliable 300 horsepower stock. They come with a Spaceball manual transmission, which is pretty badass. But more importantly, they were way overbuilt. Have you ever heard of stitched leather in the bottom of a car's door card? They also have suspension that you can change as you drive. Comfort's just for when you're going for a cruise, sports when you're driving through the canyons, and advanced is for when you're actually racing. Volvo claims that their suspension can keep the car in a horizontal attitude relative to the road. To be fair, I don't know what the else the car could be relative to the road, like perpendicular, but regardless, the suspension settings are really cool. These cars also came stock with Brembo brakes. They can basically stop on a dime. The leather seats are super comfortable too, and they have rare trim called Nordicap, which is a blue leather interior, which is awesome. Anyway, I basically sold you on the S60R V70R, right? Well, let me first put you on the Volvo S80. It's their 2007 V8 sedan. They're not terribly fast, but super comfortable and sound amazing. So the V8s in these cars were actually built by Yamaha. Yeah, the people who make pianos, lawnmowers, boat engines. They also made a Volvo V8 and it screams. I think stock it's about 315 horsepower, which is still pretty solid. It's not super fast, but it's very solid for a sedan. You can find these incredibly cheap on Facebook too, which is nice. But there's some drawbacks before you go buy one. So their all-wheel drive system, I don't really know what I think of it yet. It's super good all-wheel drive and you will not slip out. That being said, it's way front-wheel drive bias. And we know how I feel about front-wheel drive. Also, there's the steering. I've heard these cars have very loose steering and it's not very responsive. They have a really wide wheelbase, so you don't get a very tight turning radius either. And unfortunately, there's limited aftermarket support. There's extremely good aftermarket support, but sadly, there's just not very much of it. I've heard that IPD is a great company for aftermarket support. Anyway, that's where the cons end. I think one of the greatest things about these cars is how underground they are. As I said earlier, Volvos are the best sleepers. So what I'm getting to is that only old people drive these cars, right? Which means these cars are extremely well maintained and you don't need to worry about buying them secondhand. These cars are literally grandma owned and grandma driven. You don't usually see grandmas at street takeovers, right? They're also usually listed for under $10,000. Which my broke ass really fucks with. Next, I want to talk about the newer Volvos. I'll get back to the old ones in a minute, but I don't usually see people talking about the newer ones. Did you know that some of these cars are making about 450 horsepower stock? The Volvo S90, V90, and XC90 all make dumb power. Unfortunately, they're all hybrid cars, but I think 450 horsepower is pretty tempting, right? I think these cars would be very ideal daily drivers, or at least a great car to have for a road trip. Volvo really knows what they're doing when it comes to comfort. 58 miles a gallon is nothing to complain about either. Okay, back to the older Volvos. They're still great cars, they look great, they're comfortable. comfortable, but they're very far from canyon carvers. Some people have built very impressive Volvos though. The Volvo 240 might be the perfect car for anyone. They are slow, but there's so many trim levels for this car, and so many people have modified them into drift cars, off-roading cars, drag cars, race cars. They're kind of like the BMW E30 of Volvo in my opinion. Just a perfect blank canvas. The Volvo 240 is super slow, but fortunately it has a very large engine bay, so you can toss something faster in there. While Volvo may not be the perfect car brand, they definitely have created some amazing cars. The safety of Volvos unfortunately has to take away from the fun a bit. The really safe all-wheel drive system or the wide turning radius. While Volvo has created the daily driver of all time, there's a chance that they haven't created the sports car you've been looking for your whole life. Volvo mogs, but only as much as safe family cars can mog.